In the grand old days, there was a great kingdom of Kosala to the north of the sacred river Ganga. This kingdom was fertilized by the river Sarayu, a tributary to Ganga. Many illustrious kings of the Sola dynasty reigned over this kingdom, the most outstanding ones among them being Manu, Ikshwaku, and Raghu. Ayodhya was the capital of Kosala, and it was deemed a model city. The invincible is the literal meaning of the word Ayodhya. Dasaratha was a renowned monarch of the Sola lineage, and he wielded the sceptre for quite a long time. The one armored with 10 chariots is the literal meaning of his name. As a typical ruler, he was an adept in handling war and peace, both of them being inevitable in life. He had the privilege of waging a victorious war, allying himself with the celestials. He entertained a paternal affection towards the subjects. It was always from sages and saints that Dasaratha besought advice, both for personal and for public concerns. His ministers were well experienced in administration. The people in their turn were properly educated and virtuous to the core. They were industrious and bent on increasing the wealth of the empire. There were in the country all-round combinations of contentment and happiness. Now nature also was bounteous to boot all these human excellences. Earth was fertile and productive. Rainfall was measured and periodical. Dasaratha's kingdom fared well in tune with the gift of providence. But in the midst of all this munificence in life, the monarch felt a gap not yet filled, though advanced in age. The want of progeny worked like a canker in his heart. All the other blessings in life came to naught because he happened to be without issue. The boon of a son was what Dasaratha was hankering after. It occurred to him that a suitable religious sacrifice might be performed in order to achieve this end. When he consulted the wise men in this matter, they also gave their hearty approval. Now, Rishasringa was a sage well experienced in this field. Therefore, a reverential approach was made to him, and to the luck of the king, he gave his consent to execute the elaborate ritual. Royal arrangements were meticulously made for the performance of the sacrifice. What this sacrifice means requires to be understood. Technically, it is called yagna or a yaga. As the modern scientist utilizes the atomic power both for constructive and destructive purposes, the ancient rishis harnessed the psychic power for good and occasionally for evil too. Of all the powers of nature, psyche is the subtlest and most powerful. It can be commissioned to commune with God and to achieve anything in life. It comes under the law of causation at the mental level. King Dasaratha and his 3 queens had put themselves under strict physical and mental discipline as a preliminary to the yagna. What they did was tapas or austerity, for without it, nothing great can be achieved. The sacrificial rituals were peremptorily carried out as enjoined in the scriptures. At the same time, a parallel happening was taking place in heaven. The celestials approached Brahma, the creator, and complained to him about the atrocities perpetrated by Ravana, the demon of Lanka. That lust-laden Rakshasa was infuriated with pride because Brahma has bestowed on him the boon of invincibility by any being barring man, the insignificant in his eyes. Now Brahma and the retinue presented this problem to Mahavishnu. With a smile, the Lord said he would forthwith incarnate as a man, the son of Dasaratha, and set right the evil. On earth, the performance of yagna by Dasaratha was at its zenith. A resplendent deity emerged from within the sacred sacrificial fire. Solemnly, he offered to Dasaratha a gold vessel containing milk pudding. The deity instructed the king to distribute the ambrosia among his 3 queens for progeny. This done, the deity vanished within the fire. Dasaratha distributed a half of the celestial food to Kausalya, the first queen, a quarter to Sumitra, and the remaining quarter to Kaikeyi. Still there was in the vessel some remnant which he gave to Sumitra. This act led to their conception and they became expectant mothers. While in pregnancy, prayer went forth ceaselessly to the benevolent. The wheel of time rolled on. Planets also rolled on their courses. 5 of them now moved to their respective zodiacal constellation. And this is a rare phenomenon. The one that takes birth at this juncture is bound to be the embodiment of divinity. This auspicious time came on the 9th day of the bright fortnight of the month of Chitra that falls between April and May. It was at that benign moment that Rama was born of Kausalya. Subsequently, Kaikeyi gave birth to Bharata, then Sumitra begot the twins Lakshmana and Shatrughna. The 4 brothers were the embodiments of righteousness, truth, fidelity, and heroism. The brothers were educated on sound lines so that they might become the future protectors of society. They had their parts to play in the world as its active members. Religion was the basis of life. It was inculcated in them as a core of the human being. Morality and spirituality got well ingrained in them. In the study of the Vedas, they were made adepts. The auxiliaries to the Vedas and the other branches of knowledge were imparted to them with due attention. Physical culture was of prime importance to the princes. In archery, horse riding, elephant riding, and the maneuver of chariots, the royal youths became experts. Educating the whole personality was what was given to them. Deep-rooted in spirituality, molded in sterling character, ever intent on doing good to others, built in fine and strong physique, brilliant in warfare. These were the divine attributes that marked Sri Rama and brothers for their own. The 4 brothers loved one another dearly. In form they were 4, but in spirit they were one. Rama, the eldest, had the element of paternal affection towards the other 3, and they in their turn looked upon Rama as their idol. The parents were all in all to them. The thought of mother and stepmother gained no access to their hearts. Their devotion to the parents was superb. Rama excelled the others in this respect. He is Putrottama, the model son whom the world has ever known. And among the brothers, they had involuntarily put themselves in the inseparable twos. Rama and Lakshmana ever formed a pair, and Bharata and Shatrughna the other. In this order, they have immortalized themselves as the ideal brothers. The brothers were the delight of the parents as well as the people. Rama in particular was to one and all the source of joy and the pole star of the future. King Dasaratha thought that the time had come for the betrothal of the sons. He shared his ideas with the counselors and other seniors. They were all unanimous in their opinion in this matter. In India, wedlock is a sacred act. It starts as betrothal and ends as marriage. Child betrothal was common in ancient days. It was adopted by wise people to minimize the vagaries of lust. In young age, before lust sets in, unbreakable relationship is created between the would-be husband and wife. The relationship cultivated among the newly born brothers and sisters is providential and it works successfully. Conjugal relationship is created by the parents concerned and it is almost as good as providential. The Indian marriage system is about the best in the world. It is not based on individualism but on family usage and socialism. The youths entrust the marriage affair to the parents and it works with a minimum risk. Elsewhere, love culminates in marriage. In India, love commences with marriage and evolves into sanctity. Individual life is an aspect of the cosmic life. The mode of life and the work to be performed varies from man to man. The greater the personality, the higher and more exacting is the duty that falls to his lot. Very often, one event in life coalesces with another either to augment or to obstruct. Here is a specimen. King Dasaratha and his ministers are absorbed in the discharge of public duty. A warder steps in and announces the arrival of the great Rishi Vishwamitra at the gate. The monarch puts aside the routine work and hastens to the entrance. He offers a devotional welcome to the holy guest and touches his feet as a mark of reverence. The sage is then solemnly escorted into the audience chamber. He is requested to occupy a distinguished chair. The others then assume their seats in accordance with their rank. The sovereign submits.
O adorable one, your career is a model to humanity. You started in life as an ordinary ruler of earth, but you are now at the pinnacle of enlightenment. In your spiritual voyage, you had to encounter with many a temptation and setback, but you are not foiled on that score. Defeats and the fallen states were mere stepping stones to your onward march to perfection. Within the span of a single human life, you have scaled from Raja to Rajarishi, to Maharishi, and finally to Brahma Rishi, the final of spiritual attainment. Homage to you, the embodiment of undaunted perseverance. Blessed am I, blessed is my family, blessed is my lineage, that you have deigned to sanctify my abode by setting foot on it. Your arrival here is equal to several sacred places getting commingled here. I dedicate my all to you. My service is at your disposal. I offer to carry out your command reverentially.
The sage is pleased with the royal bounty. With a smile he speaks. May you be as firm in execution as you are liberal in speech. I am celebrating a sacrifice. Two demons named Maricha and Subahu are bent upon defiling it with blood and flesh. On larger interest, I should not direct my psychic power acquired by austerity against them. Your eldest son Rama is the one person who can do away with those demons. I want the service of your son just for 10 days. I shall see to it that no harm befalls your beloved son. The time has come for him to display the divine valor on public interest. Vashishta and other assembled sages here will endorse my view. Dasaratha is stunned. He remains dumb for a while. Then he gathers up the mind and stammers.
Rama is hardly 16 now. He is too young and inexperienced to combat the Rakshasas. I shall with my army behind me undertake to protect the purity of your sacrifice. Cast off all anxiety on this issue. At the same time, I implore you to abandon the thought of risking Rama's valor against the Rakshasas.
Vishwamitra now poses anger, which was formerly his wont. In measured voice he pronounces, So you go back from your promise. It is unworthy of a descendant of Raghu. Ikshvaku line has not to this day deviated from the path of Dharma. But you prove yourself now false in promise. Your act portends evil to your house. I return foiled in my mission. You live long, fondling your son. This development created tension in the minds of the assembled great ones. For the displeasure of Vishwamitra foreboded evil consequences. A holy man never asks for anything for himself. His demand is ever for public weal. When that is denied, woe unto the denier. Vashishta knew of this, and so he intervened. He calmly put it to Dasaratha that a righteous man never broke a pledge. All merits melted away from him who went back upon his word. Secondly, Vishwamitra was not an ordinary rishi. He was the embodiment of prowess. Though he could easily safeguard his sacrifice, he sought the service of Rama in order to give him training in the great work for which he was born. No evil whatsoever would befall Rama. This counsel clarified the understanding of the king. He humbly submitted to Vishwamitra that he would surrender Rama and his counterpart Lakshmana for the contemplated holy task. The two princes were brought in before the august assembly. They looked more like celestials than human lads. Presently, the queen mothers also came in. The father charged the sons with the duty fallen to their lot. The sons received it reverentially. Then they prostrated before the mothers, the father, the family preceptor Vashishta, before the prospective preceptor Vishwamitra, and before the other elders. Receiving their blessings, the lads set out with the sage. Spiritual prowess and martial prowess were commingled in them. That confluence of the physical lustre and the mental effulgence was a sight for the mortals as well as the immortals. Beaming with zeal, the youths kept pace on either side of the illumined master. Vishwamitra's entry into Ayodhya brought in joy, shock, and conciliation in quick succession. In it are contained a few lessons for life. The seedlings has to be transplanted in a new soil for its robust growth. The grown-up chicken requires to be driven out by the mother hen so that it may learn self-dependence. Prolonged parental protection to the youth is more a hindrance than help. It mars the growth of the son. It leads the fond parent into dotage. Change of environment during adolescence broadens the mind. It sharpens the intellect. It adds to knowledge. It leads to wisdom. It trains the youth in adaptability. It equips him for life. At all times, an institutional training of a youth is far superior to the domestic training. Vishwamitra brought in that blessing to Rama. Above all, he knew the use of several celestial weapons, and he wanted to hand over the science to Rama on a fitting occasion so that he might use it in future for a great cosmic purpose which he was destined to fulfill. The great Rishi and his royal pupils spent the first night of their journey on the bank of the river Sarayu. Two mystic formulae known as Bala and Atibala were then taught to the pupils. Strength and great strength are the meanings of those psychic forces, by the use of which man can withstand fatigue, hunger, and thirst. Kamashrama was a significant institution they came by on the way. It is held that it was here that Shiva burnt to ashes the lustful Manmatha. Because of the destruction of Kama, the place was known as Kamashrama. A night was spent by the trio with the holy men of that place. Then they had to pass through a dense forest haunted by Tataka and her son Maricha. They were hideous monsters of extraordinary strength, owning the power to transform themselves into any being on the earth. They delighted in torturing the human beings and in feasting on their flesh. People therefore dreaded entering that region. Gaining access to it, the sage said, "Rama, I have purposely brought you here. This Tataka is to be done away with, and you are the person divinely commissioned to do it. Do not hesitate thinking it improper to kill a woman. This code applies only to civilized society. The question of sex does not arise when encountering monsters and ferocious beings. They are to be exterminated in the interest of the good. Provoke the demon into antagonism and vanquish her." Rama responded. He strung the bow and twanged it. Startled by the sound so created, the denizens of the forest dashed out, headlong in confusion in different directions. The demoness Tataka burst out of her den enraged by this disturbing noise. She rushed towards the locality from where this challenge emanated. Spotting out the three figures that were responsible for the intrusion, she resolved to chew them up like dessert after dinner. As she swooped down, Rama's shaft, the messenger of death, met her halfway in the sky and pierced through her heart. The monster thudded on the ground like a huge mound of flesh and bones as blood was gushing out. And this was Rama's maiden conflict with the cruel. The master congratulated him with a warm embrace. In the destruction of Tataka, the terror was removed from the otherwise invitingly dense and delightful forest. While on the way, the warrior sage Vishwamitra taught Rama the science of many super powerful arms, the way of invoking them into action, the way of making use of them both for offensive and defensive purposes, and the way of revoking them. Rama in his turn taught them all to Lakshmana. Unlike the modern mighty material weapons, these were all mystic weapons, unfailing in the hands of a worthy person. Vishwamitra's selection of the student is in itself an indication of the profundity of this science. Finally, the preceptor and the pupils arrived at Siddhashrama, the holy abode of the former. The inmate rishis were happy at the successful mission of the Maharishi, for it was no easy errand of obtaining the services of the sons of the monarch Dasaratha for the defense of a Hazaras Yajna. The Rakshasas were bent on polluting it and making it ineffective. Preparations for the sacrifice were made forthwith. It was to last 6 days. Vishwamitra was to go through it, maintaining the vow of silence. The demons would pounce upon it at any moment, so the royal brothers were obliged to keep unbroken vigil for 6 days and nights. There was an uproar in the sky on the last day. Like a dark cloud, the demons' battalion headed by Maricha and Subahu moved forward. After making Lakshmana alert, Rama discharged the Manavastra on Maricha. The weapon played its part. Instead of killing the victim, it confused him and threw him far away into the sea. With the Agniastra or the firearm, Rama killed Subahu. Then both the brothers did away with the Rakshasa host. The sacrifice at long last came to a successful termination. Vishwamitra was immensely pleased. He felt his indebtedness to the king Dasaratha. He praised the prowess of the princes. He told them that Siddhashrama had become true to its name because of their victory over the wicked. He who overcomes evil is a Siddha. Vishwamitra knew of the mission and life of the sons of Dasaratha. He also knew of the part he was to play in this cosmic scheme. So he silently played his part, posing all the while that he was in need of the services of these two brothers. The two royal brothers reverentially awaited whatever else behest that was to come forth from the sage. One fine morning, Vishwamitra communicated to Rama a great event that was to take place at Mithila, the capital of the sage king Janaka. There was again a wonderful bow exhibited in that city. Many talented people from far and near would gather there. Several inmates of the Siddhashrama were getting ready to accompany the presiding sage to that city of culture. It would be very appropriate for the princes of Ayodhya to go along with the ashramites to participate in that conspicuous gathering. The pupil submitted to the will of the preceptor. The party set out on journey and proceeded. The presence of Rama and Lakshmana in the company added untold joy to one and all. When they neared Mithila, they could see its panoramic view. But in contrast with it, in the outskirts stood a deserted ashrama. Signs of its once beautiful and flourishing conditions were also in evidence. Enquired by Rama, the sage gave an account of it. This was long ago the loveliest abode of the Maharishi Gautama. His partner Ahalya was a woman of exquisite beauty. Smitten with her enticing form, Indra, the king of gods, managed to have an illicit connection with her, disguising himself like her husband Gautama. But the true husband found out the fact and cursed the male to become a eunuch and the female to become a stone. In order to forget this unholy incident, Gautama abandoned this place and retired into the Himalayas. While departing, he predicted that in due time, Rama would come to set right this predicament and that he would also return then from the Himalayas. As the narration was going on, Rama by chance trod on a stone which vanished forthwith and a graceful woman emerged instead. That was the accursed Ahalya. Presently Gautama also arrived as he had planned. The purified Maharishi couple paid elaborate homage to Rama and his brother. This incident represents a cosmic fact. The Jivatman or the individual self is in the fallen state which is as bad as that of a stone. By reviving contact with God, the Jivatman gets back to the original pure state. The modern science tells the same tale in the language familiar to it. The plan of nature is to emerge from that of the insentient to that of the sentient. In other words, nature, which is apparently in the materialized state, tries to get back to the original spiritual state. Vishwamitra's group quietly entered the extensive compound got up for the sacrificial rites at Mithila. Its first impression was that the concourse was provided for in plenty. That was a sign of material prosperity. Secondly, the assembled people were all educated and cultured. They were drawn in from far and near. The priests were all well versed in the lore of the Yaga. Sadananda, the eldest son of Gautama by Ahalya, served as the chief priest to the king Janaka. This priest was the first to receive Vishwamitra. The sage communicated to Sadananda the happy reunion of his mother and father and their devoted worship of Rama, who was the divine dispeller of the curse of Gautama. The son was beside himself with joy at this auspicious development. The king Janaka was delighted to hear of the arrival of the spiritual giant Vishwamitra at his sacrificial theatre. He presented himself before the sage and expressed his gratitude for the former's arrival to sanctify the sacrifice with his holy presence. Presently, the king's attention was inquisitively drawn towards the heavenly handsome lads found among the hermits. The visiting sage introduced them and spoke about their youthful service in the Siddhashrama. He concluded that on his own initiative, he had brought them offering to show them the wonderful bow kept in the palace of the king Janaka at Mithila. The implication was patent both to the speaker and the spoken to. At that stage, that topic was kept in abeyance. A sacrifice performed in India in those days had its four features as the motive. Firstly, the things made use of in the ritual aspect indicated the material prosperity of the country. Secondly, the social system became evident from the way in which the populace participated in the function. Thirdly, wisdom and culture, the acme of human life, were effectively imparted in the course of the sacrifice. Fourthly, each yajna had a definite objective to achieve forthwith. For example, the king Dasaratha's horse sacrifice culminated as Putrakameshti Yajna, or the sacrifice performed for progeny. The cultural enlightenment brought about by the chief priest Sadananda at the sacrificial rites of Janaka was very significant. He spoke of the possibilities and attainment of man, basing his theme solely on the life sketch of the sage Vishwamitra, who fortunately was bodily present there. For this reason, the task was all the more exacting. Any irregularity in the delineation would meet with a consequential reprobation. The gist of the dialogue was as follows. Vishwamitra started his career as a model king. His relationship with the subject was sound, but his encounter with sage Vashishta was wrought with disaster. While out for a hunt, the overbearing ruler became envious of the hermit's overabundant hospitality to himself and to his unwieldy host. Finding that a divine milk cow in Vasishta's ashrama was the cause of the inexhaustible supply of provision, he requisitioned that animal with royal authority. But the demand was not conceded by the holy man. This issue led to a warfare in which the king was put to rout and humiliation. Vishwamitra discovered that spiritual prowess was superior to human force. He therefore resorted to austerity in order to acquire the supramundane power. A prolonged self-discipline helped him become a rishi and then a Rajarishi. Still, he was far below a Brahma Rishi in spiritual attainments. But on that score, his spirit of perseverance did not cool down. Rather, it was steadily on the increase. Now a celestial damsel known as Menaka lured him into conjugality and begot a baby by him. At this juncture, Vishwamitra realized his folly and his spiritual fall. So he restarted his penance, hazardous as it was. Austerity is the only remedy for all delinquency. The kingly aspirant plunged into it vehemently and had his reward. He rose again to the heights of excellence. Still, he had not yet transcended the possibility of a setback. This time, Ramba, the heavenly damsel, came to tempt him. But the budding Maharishi burst forth into anger, which was as harmful as lust, if not more. So he fell again. After an acute repentance for the slip, the struggling sage made one more strenuous attempt and got over all human imperfections. Because of his indomitable perseverance, he became Brahma Rishi, the last word on human perfection. His life is an objective lesson in ceaseless effort and the attainment of divinity within the brief span of a single human birth. When Sadananda said so, the sage Vishwamitra remained a fully balanced spectator to all that was recounted of him. Not a muscle on his face moved in reaction to the accounts blameworthy as well as praiseworthy. That equanimity was in itself a sign of the holy man having transcended all mundane limitations. The last phase of the horse sacrifice was the selection of a suitable groom to Sita of heavenly beauty, whom the king Janaka had obtained as a boon from the Mother Earth. Exceedingly trying was the test of the worth of the prince who would sue for the charming Sita's hand in betrothal. The heavy bow of the great god Shiva came as a prize to the saintly king Janaka. Whoever lifted, bent and strung the unwieldy bow became the partner of that priceless princess of Mithila. Many a prince dared not try the test, which was humanly impossible. Now, at the request of sage Vishwamitra, the great and the godly bow was dragged on a suitable chariot to the assembly. The huge crowd gazed at the stupendous bow with amazement. The royal suitors in particular were dazed at the impossible test. The sage expectantly looked at Rama. The obedient pupil bowed to the master and gracefully walked towards the bow of Shiva. There was a hushed silence among the audience. With ease, the divine youth lifted up the bow. Wonder was writ on the faces of all. He strung the bow elegantly. Wonder in the audience developed into a seething amazement. He planted the one end of the mighty bow on the ground and with both the arms gave pressure on the other end at the top. With a boom, the bow broke. A thrill pierced the hearts of all present. Instantly, it transformed itself into the adoration of the hero. With an ethereal bliss beaming on the face, the king Janaka stepped forward and proclaimed, "The venerable Rama wins the hand of the celestial Sita, the treasure of my heart." Messengers were sent post-haste to Ayodhya to inform the happy tidings to King Dasaratha and to invite him to celebrate the marriage of his son. A deed of valor of the type performed by Rama was in those days a mark of the attainment of maturity and of fitness for conjugality. Meticulous preservation of the virility of the race was considered a holy act. The weakling and the imbecile were not allowed to procreate puny progeny. Evidence to this rigidly may be found in some parts of nature. The male bees fight among themselves and the strongest is permitted to mate the queen bee. In a herd of elephants, the strongest male mates the females. This is how the vigor of the species is maintained. The modern man has a lesson to learn in this respect. Dasaratha, who was at first unwilling to part with his pet son, now realized the excellence that had emerged from that separation. Royally invited by Janaka, he hastened with his retinue to Mithila, anxious to meet his distinguished son. The august arrival of one mighty monarch at the capital of another led to an all-round jubilee culminating in the marriage of Sita to Rama. Taking advantage of the rare occasion, 3 cousins of Sita, Mandavi, Urmila and Sutakirti were also given in marriage to Bharata, Lakshmana and Shatrughna. Dasaratha was beside himself with joy at the development of things. The sage Vishwamitra's role in the Ramayana comes to an end here. It seemed as if he had laid malign hands on the domestic affairs of the king Dasaratha. But a more benign act than what he did could not be expected. What he did was for the welfare of all concerned. He took charge of the adolescent Rama and Lakshmana and handed them over back to the parent, fully trained and competent to discharge public duties. The sage then retired into the Himalayas to be merged in beatitude. The return journey to Ayodhya was pleasant at the start. The king had all his 4 sons equipped for life and also wedded befittingly. so nobody was happier than he. But all on a sudden there was a disturbance. The wind blew furiously, the earth seemed to shake, the sky was overcast with darkness, the atmosphere became oppressive. Dramatically there appeared on the scene the terrific figure of Parasurama, the sworn enemy of the Kshatriyas, the uprooter of the race. Parasurama means Rama of battle axe. He bore a big bow on one shoulder and his characteristic battle axe on the other. His father, the sage Jamadagni, was put to death by a king. Parasurama therefore took a vow to exterminate the Kshatriya race. Disturbance of the elements preceded his arrival at a place. With his matted locks twisted overhead like a cone, he was terrible to look at. His face emitted fire as it were. Dasaratha was not prepared for this turn of events. He became unnerved. In choked voice, he pleaded for the safety of his son who was tender in age and who had done no harm to the visiting warrior sage. But Parasurama ignored the very existence of Dasaratha and his retinue, including Vasishtha and the other holy men. He singled out Rama and challenged him in a roaring voice.
You, a Kshatriya chef, you managed to win a cheap championship among worthless rustics by breaking the rickety Shiva bow. Here is the Vishnu bow. I demand that you string it and give me battle. Even otherwise, you are doomed along with your group.
Rama said, "We youngsters learn right attitude and good conduct, seeing the example set by elders like you, venerable self. But if you are constantly given to anger and excitement, from whom are we then to learn demeanor? Your reverend made ridiculing reference to my Kshatriya descent. But I happen to be in that lineage by divine dispensation and not by personal choice. Great ones recognize man by merit and not by birth into this line or that." Parasurama felt the folly of his rude remark, but he did not confess. The second point also went against him. Rama's decisive blow comes as the third point. "I string a bow not to show off my strength, but in obedience to your order. Holy sir, it is done. Now I set the arrow to the bow, never to withdraw. It is ever invincible. Please point out the target to it." Parasurama said,
My lord, now I realize who you are. You have already nullified my vainglorious power. You are the supreme come on earth to set right dharma. Please aim your arrow on my pride and egoism.
Rama does so mentally, and Parasurama gains in wisdom. His function as a destructive force is over. He is directed by the young savior to retire into the Himalayas and be absorbed in austerity. This was the first spiritual exploit of Sri Rama come on earth for this great purpose. Two more exploits he was to have, one with Vali and the other with Ravana. The party reached the beautiful city of Ayodhya in due course. The city was gaily decorated. The citizens were beside themselves with joy at the royal arrival. The bridegrooms and the brides were heartily welcome. Joyous greetings were exchanged. The happy mothers of the princes gave loving reception to their sons. They fondly accepted the fair brides and greeted them with motherly affection. Supreme bliss prevailed in the palace.